saying metal solo.
I am Owen. This is Chip. The only ask that I'm going to say is please, please, please wait until I get a mic to you before you start talking to the group, because the folks at home want to be able to hear this stuff too.
Yeah, we've got 1 million people live right now.
400 million people, more than the United States.
All right. So, I want you to raise your hand if you have a question that it's not Ask Chip. We'll all communally respond. If you have a question that I can help guide to an answer about your practice, about how to be more efficient, how to be happier, how to deal with your partners, how to deal with insurance, you name it, raise a hand. Owen will bring you the mic, and we will do what we can.
I mean, because we have a handful of people in this room who were speakers this week,
yes,
too. So
yes. Oh, absolutely.
A lot of brains in here.
All right, the first minute is always the longest.
Correct.
All right, so someone raise a hand.
Oh, here we go, front and center.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, for those of us in states that will likely not do anything to counteract the cuts in Medicaid, what can we be doing right now?
That's a really great question. In fact, I was going to ask that question if no one else asked one. So the first thing I'm going to tell you is we are all officially and unofficially still waiting to understand what everything means. I was having a really good conversation with Christoph Diazio before we got here, where we were both basically saying we need to understand the legislation more, because we don't know how much of this is, if he were up here, he would correct me massively, but how much of this means a reduction in the payments to you, because that has a specific effect? How much of it will result in a reduction in the patients who are covered? That has, in some ways, a similar effect, but that's a very different process. We don't know that part yet. Also, it's not just Medicaid, it's ACIP. Because if that goes as poorly as possible, the impact of ACIP on you, suddenly not recommending and therefore not requiring payments from insurance companies for vaccines, that could have, frankly, a bigger effect on you. So we're not in a wait-and-see mode. We're actively monitoring and trying to get an understanding of what the impact will be. I will give you a couple predictions in a minute. So the first piece of advice I have for you right now, today, when you get back to your office, you should recall every single Medicaid kid that you have, period, end of story. Any Medicaid kid who hasn't been in the last year, you should put them at the front of the line because you may never see them again. And any kid who can get an immunization, even if they're not overdue yet, they should be contacted endlessly. And your messaging should say, come in for this immunization now while it's still covered. And that should be your primary goal over the next couple months. If for no other reason, I mean, I'm advocating for this, obviously, because I want those kids to be immunized. I want you to get those Medicaid kids in so you can go through all the Bright Futures elements and do the developmental screening and the depression screening, all that screening you need to do. I'm saying this for clinical purposes, but we also might need to gather the acorns for the winter. And also, frankly, all those Medicaid families, they vote too. And the best opportunity you have to get their priorities in line with their voting, because many of them voted against themselves unknowingly, is to have them in front of you. It's still the best engagement you should have. So we haven't done it yet for a variety of reasons, and none of which has to do with we're lazy or anything like that. We're just waiting to get it right. But I suspect if I had been someone answering the questions instead of asking them, sometime probably in the next 60, 90 days, I mean, certainly before the end of the year, because the Medicaid cuts don't happen until next year anyway, the first round, PCC is very likely going to be producing very specific guidance about what you should be doing and how you should be using PCC to do it. Like, okay, you want to get your Medicaid kids in? Here's how you prioritize who to go after. Here's how you use broadcast messaging to do it. Here's how you use the portal to do it. Here's some sample letters. That's my guess. We haven't planned any of this. Someone at PCC might be mad at me right now, but that's what I suspect is coming. And the reason I say that is I don't think it's possible for you to be aware how much work we did during the Change healthcare debacle. I mean, that was 24/7 for the GPP guys. It was brutal. And even internally at PCC, where everyone is on this, in theory, on the same page, we were mattermosting each other, which is like, messaging each other, going, "Did you just hear? What are they doing about it? We've been working on it for 2 days. Just leave us alone." And it was such a crisis internally. And the fact is, we'd rerouted 90-something% of our clients' claims within a week or two. Like, the rest of the country got hit much harder than our clients as a rule. Don't get me wrong, some of you in here got wasted because we can't fix the payments coming in. At least the claims got out. Change Healthcare, we were able to pivot very quickly. COVID, we did a ton of things during COVID right at the beginning. And I just think when the things really start to drop, at least with this, we have some warning, but when things really start to drop, you will see PCC have answers for you faster than everyone else. That's my prediction. What I do think, this is, if you want my prediction as it relates to Medicaid and ACIP specifically, first, the Medicaid stuff is too Byzantine for me to, and too different on a state-by-state basis for me to really say, oh, this is what's going to happen, because, you live in a state who only cares about kids who aren't born yet. So we don't know yet how they're going to shake it out. In fact, you have people in your state who are going to use this as an opportunity to make it even worse. All right? So I can't, there's no one answer I can give on Medicaid. On ACIP, though, because that still has state-level implications. The AAP made the announcement. I presume everyone in here saw Sue Cressley's awesome 30 seconds. Okay, so the AAP rolls out their own fee schedule. There's no law anywhere that says that insurance companies have to pay attention to the AAPs. Wired magazine already went out to the 20 biggest payers and said, hey, are you going to pay attention to the AAP? And only one of them, California Blue Cross, said they would. The others said, we don't know yet, too soon to tell. Let's be real. Those companies are organized crime. Those companies are like organized crime. Yes, I feel like they are like organized crime, or whatever I'm supposed to say. So none of those companies out of the gate, I suspect, are going to raise their hands and say, oh, we're not paying. Well, we're proud to be the first company in the United States that doesn't cover immunizations. What they're going to say is, yes, we cover it, just like they cover after-hours codes now, which it means to say it's going to all get cost-shifted to patient deductibles, patient copays, and then this is the other thing they're going to do. They're going to say, yes, we cover the HPV, but you're not going to see their fee schedule increase as the cost of that vaccine increases. It's going to start by being flat, and then it's going to start by being less. And next thing you know, it's covered, but it only covers a fraction of your actual costs. And so the insurance company can say with a straight face, nationally, we cover vaccines, but they actually don't. What I'm waiting to hear more about, what I'm really interested to see, is what the pharmas are going to do about it. Because I have contacts at these companies, some of them, and I said to a group of them, I said, don't nod your head yes or no, and don't blink or anything, because I know you can't agree with me, but you're in a circumstance right now where you have a person in our government who with a stroke of a pen can cost you $1 billion tomorrow, because the pharmas all have those massive VFC contracts, all right? And the requirement, to remove that requirement suddenly, that could cost them $1 billion. And I just wondered, is Merck the one with this sniper name, and they're going to write the check? Or who? I'm making a joke, but like more aggressive things have been done for smaller amounts of money, and this is going to be a huge clash. And I don't know. And you know, or whatever. Sanofi has people who are trying to figure out how do we make sure that goose doesn't stop laying the golden egg. They haven't. So my long-winded way of saying, we can try to scheme all we want, but there are some much, much bigger players who might have a pushback on this, and we're just going to have to see what they do. I mean, there's no way that Sanofi's just going to let them get in the way. So I don't know what that means. And I can be cynical and say Sanofi just writes a check and suddenly RFK likes vaccines. He says he doesn't like vaccines right now because he's getting checks. So why is it hard to believe that Sanofi doesn't have deeper pockets? It's not. And I'm not picking on Sanofi. They make good vaccines. They just have the most fun name to say of all the pharmas. All right, so Ben. Owen is in silent mode now because he's taking his shoes off.
Yeah, this is in parallel to that question.
Wait.
And
PCC people can ask questions?
Yeah, no, I just want you to expand on something.
Oh, okay.
And you had mentioned some of these, but we had something similar to this question when we came out of COVID and we had the Medicaid unwinding. Mm-hmm. Is there any lessons learned from there, some of them, or do you want to expand on some that you mentioned that we can use to look back a couple years to see where we're going next?
Great question. One of the big scary elements of the Medicaid stuff is that they're going to go to the 6-month cycle. You guys know what I'm talking about? I want to see everyone nod yes. If one person nods no, I have to explain it. Okay. Oh, thank you. I appreciate the hand raise. They're going to require, and I don't know how they're going to do this exactly, but nationally they're going to require that Medicaid patients re-enroll every 6 months. Okay? Presently it's a year. Within that year, they can kick you off because they can do a check, but right now they're going to check every 6 months. And we all know that the purpose for doing so, it's like the voter laws. They're just trying to create obstacles for people being able to participate in Medicaid. At the same time, we did have the massive disenrollment 2 years ago. And some states did really well with it, and some states did not. And the evidence, to me, seemed pretty straightforward. The states that faced state and federal lawsuits because they kicked off more families than they were supposed to are just going to simply use this as an opportunity to continue to do that. In other words, I think the biggest problem that we have is we're not dealing with honesty. I think it's perfectly honest for a state to say, we only have so much money. Because it's true. We only have $100 million to cover the children in our state, and we need to figure out a way to distribute that money fairly. I think that's what we expect our legislators to say. But really what they're saying is, I don't want to spend $100 million. I want to spend $30 million because I want to give $70 million to my other rich friends. How do we get this number down to $30 million? By kicking a bunch of those kids off of the program. And during the process, when we had the big, well, I'll call it the Medicaid reconciliation 2 years ago, the AAP stepped up and provided really good information sheets for every single state. And some of the states created their own, some of the states who actually wanted to keep covering kids. It is going to be a massive, massive education and information project for PCC and all of our clients. You are going to have to communicate to your patients constantly. If you're on Medicaid, you need to sign up and re-sign up by this time. I know it will, in fact, offend some of you a little bit because you're going to say, this isn't my job. But I'm going to say, well, it's not your fault, but it is definitely your problem. You are going to have to make it easy for families to fill out those forms. I predict in the not distant future that we are going to get form requests from our clients to fill out the Medicaid enrollment form for the states that make you do it on paper versus the ones that only let you do it online. But we're going to get a form request. I mean, imagine if you live in a state where a paper request is legit. Why would we not set up a form so that every time a Medicaid patient leaves, you tap a button and there's their form? They just have to sign it. We had clients who gathered forms for their patients and helped make sure they were valid and send them in a bunch. You're going to do that not for the money, but to make sure that kid gets covered. It's not the worst hoop you've had to jump through. That's what I think is going to happen. I'm also thinking, what I'm describing is like, okay, everyone's in this together and we're all going to work to solve this problem. I think, unfortunately, this has always been true, but I don't think healthcare has been more politicized ever in our history than it is right now. And in order to, I don't want to say win, but in order to get through this, we're going to have to educate people on how to vote for their own interests. That's the best answer I can give right now, Ben, but thanks for that question.
So do you know within PCC community, everybody's Medicaid, do they re-enroll like an annual insurance? Is it like November 1st, January 1st? I ask because in Pennsylvania, it depends when the person's re-enrollment is when
Yeah.
they sign up.
Correct.
So do you think that it would probably be a wise decision, for as time consuming as it would be, to check your state portal to find out what their effective date was and just kind of keep track of it from that point?
So very likely, yes, but I think it's going to be so state dependent because not all state Medicaid portals are written the same. Some of the states have different rules. It is going to be a hodgepodge, and I don't know enough about Pennsylvania's rules right now to say, but chances are what we may be tracking next year is last enrollment date, right? And so, bless you, so and last enrollment date, I'm just making this up, it's not on our radar, but if this is how it comes through, I can absolutely see the patient lists program in the AHR saying, give me a list of all the families whose last enrollment date is this month, so you can tap a button and broadcast the messages and send them to a link that they can click and stay enrolled. And will you get all of them? No, but you're going to do your best. That's a guess. We'll see how the state stuff plays out. I mean, I'm pretty hopeful that we'll weather the storm. I think it'll just be hard work, but pediatricians know how to do hard work, so I'm not worried. All right, next question. So I'm going to ask like a nice, happy one. Linda, did you just vote? It was like at an auction.
No.
I
Yeah,
saw
whispered
her
in
like
my ear.
this, yeah.
No, Linda was like, I have a question for you. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yes. Where'd you get those shoes?
Hold on. Hold on.
Empty fields in the EHR that we can utilize instead of a 12 million flags going across our status bar, the empty fields that we can actually...
You can be assured that we are very much aware of how creative you've had to be in the past. And no, I don't expect that certainly our long-term solution is going to involve using flags because we're acutely aware of how gross that is. And if you're talking about something in particular that can be automated, like we can query the state, the Medicaid program, and we can fill those fields in, then it would all be part of their insurance section. I'm not telling you this because I don't work on or lead the team that does that work, but I know how they think, and it would be done ultimately the smart way, and that would be our hope. Right. Yeah. Hopefully we would do it that way, but it's also going to depend massively on how the states work. If it turns out that we can only query 2 state databases, it might not work that way. We're going to find out.
I have another question.
Oh, please. Yeah.
Would anybody in the room be willing to share a type of letter, if they have one, or if PCC is knowledgeable of one, speaking of immunizations, not being paid at least like what average warehouse price would be? Our Children's Health Insurance Program just switched over to our Medicaid, so now they are on the same platform. Mm-hmm. But they have come out and said they're not even going to pay that price. They will be paying under that price. It's still private, but they're going to pay under the price that's average warehouse price. So I'm looking for like assistance with being able to refute that.
So if anyone does have a letter, you have to send a note either to PCC Talk or the app so people know how to get in touch with you. But I will give you some advice about that right now. First of all, my mildly cynical advice is it doesn't matter what you write in that letter, they don't care. Okay? That's the first thing. No, I'm going somewhere with this. I like to swing the pendulum up. You can put in that letter all of the logic and reason you wish. And first of all, it's unlikely that anyone with any decision-making power is going to read it. And even if they do, they already know everything you're saying. What will change their mind, however, is if all the doctors you know who are on CHIP, hate to call it that program, and send a similar letter. And if your state chapter sends a similar letter, and you send that same letter to your elected representatives, that's what matters. The insurance companies are sociopaths, and they do not care about your feelings, or they have bottom lines that they pay attention to. And so, like, over the years, I used to spend a lot of time, like, helping people craft letters, and then I realized it doesn't matter what's in here. I've never seen someone win an insurance negotiation because they actually provided an ethical or moral or financial argument. It doesn't work. Because it doesn't benefit the insurance company to do anything until you complain so much that something has to happen. The other thing I'll say is, unless you are prepared or committed to walk away from that program, they also don't have any reason to say, yes to you. Because they can just look at you. They can just look at you and just say, okay, wait, because they just know most of the time you'll give in. But another thing, the last thing I'll tell you, this is my advice. At first I was ashamed of this advice, and now I'm not at all. Just go to ChatGPT. ChatGPT, if you say, I'm a pediatrician, I'm making this up, okay? I'm a pediatrician in Pennsylvania, and recently our CHIP program, this happened, and this happened, and this happened. I'd like to write a letter expressing my dismay and give it a couple facts, and it will spit something out that is really, really, really good, and it happens in about 30 seconds. And you might change a couple words. I was telling people this. I asked ChatGPT, write a letter. It was for an insurance negotiation thing. I was really mad about something. And I said, all right, I want the first letter of the first sentence in the letter to begin with the letter F. And I want the first letter of the first word in the second line to begin with the letter U. And I continued on, and 10 seconds later, I got a perfect letter with all my effort. Just saying. All right. All right, since you're unlikely to do that, you can send them a letter and say, I want to send this letter and do it in the form of a Shakespearean sonnet. They won't forget that one. Why not? Because it really, seriously, this is a problem with working in pediatrics or having gone to med school or anything like that. You believe in the meritocracy of your arguments, and there is no meritocracy in your arguments. He who has the gold makes the rules. So that's what I'm saying. Like, don't sweat the logic too much, because that's not what it's about. So
I'm gonna stay on that theme, Chip, and get your opinion on when it would be useful or reasonable or helpful to get patients involved in letter writing campaigns.
That's a good question.
Thank you.
So now I know that Paul didn't give it to you. Sorry. Yeah, no, Paulie's back there with a long list. Yeah. He's got names of, like, my old girlfriends. Like, who is... I say, shut up. Again, I fear making a blanket statement. You always involve your patients right at the beginning, because I can think of some times that they wouldn't. But and every insurance negotiation is a little bit different. But let's say you're not on fire, and you're just a little bummed with how Blue Cross Blue Shield is working for you right now. And you're not prepared yet to send 4,000 letters or whatever the case may be. The first and best way to involve your patients, take a look, and you should know this already, but go through your mental Rolodex and think of any of the local C-level people at any of the businesses in town who use that insurance company, or the HR people. Get the name of the HR person at whatever and whatever and whatever ampersand and whatever law firm who pays a huge amount of money to Blue Cross Blue Shield, and call the HR person and say, hey, I just want to let you know I'm starting negotiations with Blue Cross Blue Shield because they're paying me below AWP, or they don't cover depression screening. And I just wanted you to know, as the purchaser of that product, not only, I mean, I've got like 15 of your families. It's going to be really difficult when I drop them. And one phone call from someone who sends the insurance companies money, it outweighs 1,000 phone calls from angry pediatricians. All right, and usually, I mean, you all know in your practices when you've got like a big swinger coming in your practice, that's the CEO of whatever. You should absolutely know who, what insurance plan every one of those people's on. So I'm a big fan of having 2 or 3 targeted letters, because that doesn't take a lot of work, and those are fun little phone calls. Do that first. Once you've done something like that, and you've gone through some of the other machinations, I don't know if I said this during the, so Paul and I, Suzanne Madden, and help me out, Paul.
I'm gonna let you squirm.
Brennan.
Brennan? Kim Brennan?
Yes, Kim Brennan, thank you. We did a 4-part series on insurance negotiation. That is, we did it for the AAP Section H 3 years ago, and they didn't record it, so we did it here last year, and we put it up on the site, and it's great. I mean, I'm not talking about my part. Paul and Kim and Suzanne did a great job, and I think it's a real good primer for how to do this, but one part that didn't get in there, which is the advice that I got from a client years ago, which is the advice I still give, and this, I'm trying to answer your question directly, Nelson. So let's say the time has come, and you've decided, like, Blue Cross is ticking me off, and we're gonna fall in love or make up, or divorce. So what I suggest people do, and this is slightly modified from something I got from someone, so the idea isn't mine though. You generate a list of all the families who are participating with that insurance company, and you print out a letter. And you print out 1 letter per family, and hopefully it's a pretty big stack. And you have the invitation. It is really helpful if you can get to them. Now, you can't always, so you might have to do this without them. But in the letter, it says something along the lines of, dear Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, I'm Nelson. I'm your pediatrician. We love your kids. But unfortunately, Blue Cross Blue Shield is no longer viable. Blah, blah, blah. We hate to do this, but we can no longer take Blue Cross Blue Shield as of this date. First of all, just know we will always be your doctor. We are delighted to have you come see us, and we can show you how to file out of network. Secondly, we participate with these other payers over here if you move over to one of them. And keep in mind, every family of 4 who moves over, that Blue Cross just lost $45,000, all right, in premiums. And then you say, I wanted to draw your attention to the United Healthcare quarterly earnings report from last year. Here's a link. And if you have any questions or problems about this, here's the name, email address, and phone number of the patient rep, the regional vice president, the president of Blue, and what will happen. And then, okay, you share this letter with Blue Cross. And I'm just trying to say Blue Cross instead of United, because United is who deserves it the most. And when they ignore you, when you send those letters out, you don't send them all at once. You send A and B today, and you send C and D tomorrow. So it takes 2 weeks or 3 weeks for all the letters to go out. Because if you send all of the letters on day 1, United Healthcare gets 1,000 calls over 2 days, and they complain, but they don't do anything. If they get 25 or 30 calls a day for a week, they will call you and say, stop sending the letters. And in fact, what they'll say is stop sending the letters, they're illegal. And you say, show me which part is illegal. And you can't put our phone numbers on there like that. They're public. It's your company. Like, what's the problem? They all have my phone numbers. They can call me with questions. This is a three-way party transaction, all right? And then that's when they will come out to your office and renegotiate the plan. And it's with the power of those families. So I explain that to people. It does work. I've got many examples of it, but it does require some effort. Sorry. Yeah.
If anyone wants a template, we have 2 of those letters that we've sent in the last 2 months for Blue Shield.
Yeah.
And we're part of a CIN, so the negotiating was happening far above us. But we sent one letter to about 300 families about Blue Shield HMO, and about 2 days after we sent, actually I think we sent a portal message. 2 days after, we got a phone call from a Blue Shield rep saying, "Why are you telling your patients to call us?" They had no idea about the negotiation and the issue that was going on, and that got it kicked up and got it resolved.
They don't like it when you don't play by their unwritten, non-existent rules. So look, we did not set that up. Nelson just totally confirmed what I was saying, so I appreciate that. All right. Paul, you get one question. Let's see.
Oh. If the Flintstones was in the prehistoric
that's my question.
how is it that they had a Christmas special?
Do you think Fred would have ordered that rack of ribs if he knew it was going to tip over his car? Yes. Yeah, that's the question I just asked. No, yours is good. I like that, Paul. John and I were at this giant IBM conference with like a room like this with like 20,000 people in it, and you had to stand in line to ask your question at the mic, and a guy came up, and they had like Tony Robbins, something like that up there, doing what I'm doing right now. And this one guy came up to Mike, and he said, "So do you think Fred would have ordered that rack of ribs?" And I was like, and no one knew what to say for it was like a 5-second pause before the mic dropped. I was like, I will remember that for the rest of my life. That was great.
So I think you and I have had this conversation, but this is just my way of trying to, horn in on what you're doing. Yeah. So that being said, I think one of the things that I think we need to drill home is that pediatricians are just too damn nice.
Always.
And the sentiment I want to emphasize on your behalf is that don't be afraid to negotiate. And negotiation, it is not a negotiation if you're not willing to walk away.
Yep.
Time and time again, Chip and I have gotten phone calls from a payer that represents 30% of their business, and they're afraid. That is all the more reason you need to be smart. You need to stand up for yourself and get payment rates that are fair. And you can look at your cost. But what did Lynn Kramer used to do?
Yeah.
Trim the bush, trim the trees.
Every year, she would pick the lowest paying payer,
And
give them
go out.
one chance at getting into at least the middle of the pack, and if they didn't, she just let them go. No fear.
No fear.
Now, some people in here are like, "Oh, that's great. We're 70%, Centene or something." Not all of our advice works everywhere, but most of you can afford to trim some of those branches. All right, question right here. Owen's right behind you.
I'm right behind you.
Yeah. He snuck up on you, no shoes.
On the same topic, after many years, I finally decided that of my 4 major payers, the 2 lowest were just too low, but I'm not ready to walk because not yet. So the hard part was, which I did well, is that you have to find the right person to write to. If you go by their channels, you're just going to send a message and it's never going to get responded to. Mm-hmm. So I was fortunate enough that I mentioned this to my CIN, the hospital I'm with, and I said, I can't get a hold of anyone from like Cigna, like literally, like it's just bizarre. And they're like, here's an email address, write this person. And that's the exact person I need to speak to. It's the person who makes the decisions. So if you're going to engage in this, don't play by the rules of like go online and submit a request. They won't get back to you. You got to find like somebody in the hospital, somebody high up who knows the right person, and you write that person. And then
it's designed to not work.
It's designed to not work, right? So you got to get the right person. I wrote them and just like explaining the situation, why they're the lowest payer, and I wasn't saying I was going to leave. I just said this is you're an outlier, and this is difficult. And
Now, according to our measures, your performance is outside the norm.
it's outside the norm, and they don't like to hear that. Like they don't like to hear that they're the lowest. And I said, I'm happy to provide you anonymous I'm happy to get a third party to show you why your numbers are much lower and stuff. And they responded well. Actually, and I didn't have to threaten to walk away because I didn't want to do that if I wasn't sure I was going to walk away. Now maybe the next iteration of this, if they said we'll do nothing, I would have stepped it up because I didn't because I think a lot of pediatricians are like, well, I'm not going to walk away, so I won't even bother. But there's ways that you can negotiate without threatening to walk away.
So if you're not in a hurry and you're willing to add maybe 3 months, then I am sure, why not? It's free to ask, and I'm aware of plenty of examples. I remember Dan Schwartz, he's PCC client, he told me years ago, one day he looked at his lowest payer and he's like, I'm just going to see what happens. So he wrote him a letter and said, I demand 125% of Medicare. And they wrote back, they were like, okay, thanks for asking, 125% of Medicare. And he was like, what just happened? He never did anything. And so it can happen. I just don't depend on it.
But get the right person, and then just
Get the right person.
get a good letter, and then see what happens. I mean, it's very little work on my part for a big return.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
2 of the 4 payers.
Yep. Okay, does anyone else have a question? Oh, right there.
No, that's okay.
Actually, I did it on purpose. We talk a lot about payer mix, and I know that there's a variety of payer mixes, percentages that I've heard this week. So what is a way that isn't gross to kind of control or nudge? I'm trying to think of how to ask this question because, and I was delighted to hear that Karen had 87% or whatever she said and was like, I guess, seemed
Medicaid,
okay. So like maybe there's a side discussion about how to have a practice run smoothly and effectively that has 87% Medicaid. But ways to still care for your families and do your part without becoming overwhelmed with that. And if there isn't a non-gross way, then never mind.
So let me start with one half of that equation. So I will re-ask your question in my own way, to say how can we possibly expand or even maintain the volume of Medicaid that we have without also affecting the viability of our business? So a couple things. First of all, the premise of the question is one we all understand, but one thing that I'm a big fan of doing is beginning with the money. And there are plenty of states in which Medicaid pays better than some of your private payers. And of course, there's some states where that's abysmally not true. So the first thing I would really want to understand is, broadly speaking, when I have a Medicaid patient, and after I've included all my value-based payments and everything like that, what is the ding I'm really talking about? If it turns out it just so happens with your vaccine payments, you actually make a ton of money on vaccines, well, that in a way makes your Medicaid payments look lower, but you could argue, well, that's just the product part. So it's a little tricky, but that's the first thing. I would want to understand what my Medicaid revenue hit is there. Second thing, that when you say the word Medicaid is mildly a code word for no-shows. All right, and I studied it. I gave a presentation in this room and pointed at the screen, and because I was hoping to say, you all say Medicaid means no-shows, but that's not true, and it turns out it is totally true. All right, and it's true for the obvious reasons. Those families have more transportation issues, and it's much more likely that they can't afford to leave work to bring children to you. So it becomes tricky. But importantly, I think it's vital to quantify that. All right. We have practices whose Medicaid no-show rates are on par with their commercial. All right. It's not universally true. So but that I'm pointing out that on average there is a cost to having that Medicaid volume. So I'm still trying to quantify it. And then the last part, I'm going somewhere with this, but the last part of that is also to take a look at Medicaid utilization. So even with the no-shows and even with the revenue per visit, you still have to take a look, how often are Medicaid kids coming in? Just as an aside, and one of the reasons I say this, okay, and we publish this, we put this in my blog, when COVID hit and all the visits fell off the table, okay, you all lived on well visits. If it weren't for well visits, pediatricians' ships would have sunk. That's just, the numbers are right there, okay? You would have gone 4 months without revenue. No one did during COVID. Everyone feels like they did, but no, they did not. In fact, infant visit rates didn't change at all. It's not a surprise, logically. So fast forward to that first fall and the second fall after COVID. All right, and by the way, those first 3 falls, 2020, 21, 22, even a little bit 23. 23 was strep. There's more strep on planet Earth in the fall of 23 than ever in history. I'm sure of that. But 21, 22 in particular, you were getting overrun by little silly sick visits because you had to take a lab, you had to do a test, you had to give a shot, to keep kids in school. And there was a real viral swing. But in 2020 and 21, one of the things that happened is kids started going back to school. And we have the data for this. They started going back to school, and for the kids who were outside the immunization requirement zone, as you know, the biggest reason they come back in is for sports. And the sports didn't happen in 2020 and 2021. So in fact, this is more 21, all right, really. Because I'll just say that, just as an aside, all of the preventive care measures that we track were the highest in October, November, December 2020 than they've ever been. More kids on the planet had well visits in October 2020 than ever before. It's gone back down to normal rates, unfortunately. But that fall, and one of the reasons why your rates were so good in October 2020 is the well visit attendance rate for kids with commercial plans actually slowed down because they didn't need them for sports. But the well visit rates for Medicaid kids stayed the same and maybe even improved a little bit. And I hate to say it's because you had room in your schedule, and because the commercial kids weren't coming in, because that 14-year-old boy was all caught up on his vaccines. And I'm saying this because we need to do the math on what Medicaid actually means for you in your practice. All right? So that's on one side of the equation. On the other side of the equation, I think you have to look at things like the utilization of Medicaid. How often are they coming? Oh, that's what I was just talking about. And also, what kind of difference there is from a diagnostic perspective. Are they more challenging visits on average? Are you having to do more work? Do the social determinants of health have a real impact? And I'm saying all of these things because if we didn't have to worry about any of the things I just talked about, the actual monetary difference is a lot smaller. And like even at 30% discount, you can do it with you can actually do it with a little bit of volume. All right, so but I'm still talking about that one side. So the other thing I would then talk about is what are the solutions available to you to make your practice more efficient and effective in the first place, so that, to me, a really fascinating exercise is, if we were 100% Medicaid, what would that look like? How many visits would we have to do in order to stay open? Or what would the visits need to look like? Of course I get a phone call. What would those visits need to look like? And because you have your status quo today, and when you are trying to ask a question like, well, what happens if we increase the volume of Medicaid? You just want to say, well, what happens if I move this slider left and right? But really, you have to back out and look at the big picture and be like, well, if we move from 20 to 40% of Medicaid, it's not just that we make money on less money on 20% of these visits. The workflow is different. My patient volume is different. It might be something as simple as oh my gosh, we need more Spanish translators, or we need to change that part out front, or it turns out that Medicaid makes this element of our workflow a lot easier, so how can we leverage that? All right, or we have multiple offices, and one of the offices has a much higher Medicaid population than the others. How can we actually drive our Medicaid patients and the doctors within our larger clinic who would like to work on that population, can we drive them to one location, making it easier for us to do visits with commercial kids at another location, making it more efficient? I'm not trying to segregate for the purpose of segregation. I'm trying to segregate for the purpose of efficiency, which is probably how people who wanted to segregate things say things. I don't mean it that way, all right? I'm very specifically, PCC used to have a client with 2 locations, one of which was like 70% Medicaid and one of which was like 10% Medicaid. And what they realized is they had doctors, as a 17-doctor practice. They had some doctors who wanted to just really focus on the underserved all the time. And then you had other doctors who were like, I like making money. And they had everyone in between. And the way they ended up managing that, which I found really interesting, is they did all their best to have all the Medicaid kids largely seen at this one location, the non-Medicaid at the others. And the way they did the physician compensation was you could volunteer to work at the Medicaid practice as much as you wanted. You could work there 3 days a week, 5 days a week, 0 days a week. And they gave you credit in your productivity model. Every day you worked in the Medicaid clinic was equal to 1 average day for all the doctors across the board. And what that meant was they then could run that Medicaid clinic like a Medicaid clinic with a certain speed, a certain pace, a certain style, certain resources. If you decided to work there once a month, once a week, 4 times a week, you weren't sacrificing your bottom line. And if you didn't like working in that clinic and you wanted to see 40 otituses a day at $150 a visit, all on Blue Cross Blue Shield, you could go there, but you were consciously subsidizing the work being done in the other practices. And by pulling the Medicaid kids away from that location and pulling the commercial kids to the other, they actually improved the workflow in both locations and gave each of the clinicians an opportunity to participate in the way that they wanted to, but also benefiting all of the clinicians overall. So that's why I'm giving you that particular example. I'm sorry? Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Any other questions?
Questions.
Where are you? Oh, you're all the way. Like, where's that voice?
You can't
from?
find me. I am everywhere.
Oh, there's one. There's one. You got to run all the way over. Yeah, you're at surround. All around you.
All around you. If anybody goes to the movies anymore. I know Chip does now.
That's right.
This is just a comment on the Medicaid part. 2 things in terms of, we have about 25% Medicaid, but we do physician compensation based on billables, not on reimbursement. So.
Oh, yeah, that's a broken model.
Oh, okay. Well,
let me restate that. It can be.
I'd love to hear more.
Well, I want to hear the end of your question.
Well, no, it's not a question, but it's a statement, but I'll form it as a question. Is that a good idea? The second thing is, if you are dealing more complex patient, I think billing accordingly, adding those sick to wells, I think can be very helpful for more complex patients, of which Medicaid tend to be. So,
yep. If you have a Medicaid who will pay for that.
Yeah, ours tend to, but depending on which payer you talk to.
So, first of all, the best compensation model is a compensation model where everyone being compensated is happy with it. So I'm like, there's no one great model. The problem, in my experience, we're gonna wrap soon apparently, like you and me together. Do you beatbox?
No, I'm gonna freestyle.
Okay, all right. When you have a compensation model that is based on revenue, the payments that come in, which is, I believe, what you just said to me. Oh, on charges. That's okay then. All right, but we have a lot of clients who do their compensation model based on payments. And you know what? If you're four good friends and everyone's pay or mix is the same and age mix is the same, then it doesn't really matter. Because, as a rule, charges, payments, RVUs, visits, those are all like highly correlated. They're just analogs for each other, unless in a practice, your payer mix is unbalanced. So you got one person who's 45% Medicaid and one person who's 20% Medicaid. Using payments gets you screwed up. But charges are also a problem because of vaccines, depending on how your VFC circumstance. Oh, and now you're going to tell me you pull the vaccines out too. Okay, right. Yeah. So like you didn't tell me the whole story. All right. So yes, when you use charges, you have to do that as well. And I don't have any problem using charges. You do have to keep an eye on them because no one in here actually sets their charges evenly. All right, you all might be over 190% of Medicaid or Medicare, pardon me, but I guarantee you that you're at like 1,000% on your screenings. And if it turns out one person has a lot more screenings, it can create an imbalance. PCC, Pediatric CEO, Polly, we've all published spreadsheets that make it easy to drop these numbers in and just to see if something's unbalanced, but most of the time people feel like it is and it's really not. If you use RVUs, that is the equivalent of doing charges and having your vaccines taken out without having to do the math. And it is rare that I see charges and RVUs not be very well correlated. The biggest problem with RVUs is that they change every year. So if your formula uses a mixed RVU model where you get paid, a lot of hospitals do this, you get paid $45 per work RVU. That's awesome until 2021 when the feds increase all the work RVUs by 25% for your E&Ms, and all of a sudden they have contracts that basically gave every pediatrician in the country a 10% raise. But if your compensation is relative, in other words, I'm making this up, and I'm sure this isn't what you do, but you get a salary, and then for our bonus pool that we split, it's split up based by your relative number of RVUs. If you did 30% of the RVUs, you get 30% of the pot. That's the model Paul and I and Alex Mayer, we recommend the most, but it doesn't even have to be that complicated. So using charges, if you're high Medicaid, if you take out the vaccines, that works well, with one exception. If you lose a lot of money or make a lot of money on vaccines, you can still get screwed up. So, and as a result, and you get screwed up because if you have someone who does a lot more newborns in the office and has a lot more vaccine revenue. So, for example, Alex and I just worked for this practice who has, it's stunning. They have a 50% margin on their vaccines. They're making 50%. We went back and checked it like 3 times, and I was like, and because this is a big practice, all right? We're talking like a lot of 7 figures in vaccine straight profit, not even the admins. And what that meant was, and I think, I'm like, all right, now, are they watching right now? Probably not. But I think maybe someone figured that out. And so they were basing it, they weren't adjusting for that. And so what it looked like, someone did a lot of vaccines, they were getting a lot more of the money. So it can happen on extreme ends. But like, look, if you're all more or less relatively working as hard and doing the same amount of work, and don't forget, you operate best when you have, when you can distribute patients among you based on your strengths. You've got a partner who is good with the teenage girls with eating disorders, and you're really good with the boys with headaches and whatever. So you can pull some of the what is challenging to a partner's patients off. If all of that's balanced and copacetic and people are happy, you're in the right spot. I have no idea if that's the kind of insight you were looking for, but that's what I just started talking about. All right. All right, Owen, do we get one more question?
Yeah, we can get one more question in.
Someone ask a doozy. There it is. All right, we're gonna
we go.
end where we started.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, Ask Chip is like, is PCC being illusionists? Because you're drawing your attention over here while we pack up and disappear the rest of the conference.
So that did they finish packing? Is that what? Yeah. So that's literally that is how this started. Yeah. No. That's how this started years ago. They were like, we need a class because I don't know if some of you were here. We used to put terminals in all the rooms so you could sit and do work on the terminal, so you could log in your own office, and then we had all these PCs, and it would. And one year, they were like, how do we get everyone in one room that doesn't have any of the equipment, that we don't need anyone else to monitor because we weren't streaming back then and whatever. And I was like, well, I'll just go sit in the amphitheater and answer questions. And they were like, awesome. And so I thought it was I thought I was going to kill like 30 minutes. And then what we learned is it goes until I leave. And so Owen just got the message like, they're gone. So they're gone. We can talk about whatever we want. Yes, that fourth wing was legit hot. It was hot. Oh, okay. It was legit hot for me today. Let's hear it.
I mean, I could talk about that all day long, but I feel like I should already know how you feel about this, and I'm a little scared to ask, but pediatricians in direct primary care.
You just made a statement. So what's your question?
It's very open-ended.
What are my thoughts? Yeah, there you go.
Is there a role for it?
When my kids were 5 and 7, 4 and 6, something like that, Tegan left the room, so I can tell this story. Yeah, that's right. No, don't go get him though. He did actually finally clue me into an element of the story that I did not know about. He taught me something 20 years later. My kids were 4 and 6, 5 and 7. So 4 and 6, or like Tegan was, whatever. Sabin was just in pre-kindergarten. So Tegan would have been in first grade. I'm saying this because they're really little. And it was like a January morning and cold out, dark still. And I was sitting at the kitchen table like this, and my wife was over there cutting up fruit for their lunch. And Sabin came. You guys don't know my kids, and you definitely don't know Sabin, but Sabin's a bit precocious, and he comes in and he waltzes in and sits at the table. He goes, "Dad, I have a question." I'm like, "Yeah," I was like, He goes, "I was reading the encyclopedia." He wasn't reading the encyclopedia, but he's looking at it, and he's like, "Yeah, and in the encyclopedia, a man, I'm quoting him exactly, a man has this thing and a woman has this thing, and they put it together to make a baby." And all of a sudden I'm like, and my wife started laughing so hard, she actually put her head down in the sink. She started laughing so hard, and I was frozen. And I didn't know what to do. And I'm waiting, and then all of a sudden I remember, I was like, "Buddy, that's not a question." So I was like trying to buy time. It's like, that's not a question. And unfortunately, he came back with a question that was much more challenging. I want you to think about how important this question is and how this question has ruled the lives of everyone in this room. He said, "Dad, how do they get the stuff from the man to the woman?" That's all I think about. So that's every rock and roll song of all time. No, I didn't say any of that. I was like totally and completely frozen. And Tegan, who's a little bit older, said, "They get it from kissing." Like, okay. And Sabin is like, "Shoo, I thought it was from spitting on each other." All right, so this story has been, I've told it a few times, happened forever. Here's the thing. Tegan finally told me. He's like, "You know why I said that, right? You know why I said they get it from kissing?" I was like, "No." Okay, because back then, this is 2005, before we discovered who he was, we listened to the Bill Cosby comedy albums. And in one of the comedy albums, he says, Something like, my wife and I got married, we start kissing, 9 months later a baby comes out. And that was Tegan's self-educated. You always have to be careful with the question. Okay?
Yeah, I don't know how quickly you talked about direct primary care.
Oh yeah, sorry, okay, I didn't wrap down.
I left and then I came back and you were talking about making babies. So I was like, I don't know. Okay.
That is, by the way, as long as people are making babies, you are in good shape. That is Now, direct primary care. First of all, go back to your practice. Go to your hotel room. You can do it in the airport or whatever. Run a report on your system. Add up all the money that you collected last year. Divide it by the number of active patients that you have, and then divide that by 12. You're going to find out that on average, your patients pay you, or your insurance, you collect from insurance and copays and everything like that, probably about $50 a month per patient. $600 a year. That includes vaccines. You might be at 75 or whatever, but it's not much. And that's the math that the insurance companies don't want you to do. Let's just say, I'm using round numbers so I can do math in my head. Let's just say that it's $50 a month per kid. That's $600. So why not just say to all of your families, for $100 a month, I will cover everything and cut your patient volume in half, and you don't submit a claim, and you can spend 45 minutes to an hour with each kid. Of course you would do that if you could snap your fingers and get there. All right? Vaccines are a problem. If you live in a universal state, this is way easier, okay? But there are actually some really interesting ways around that, and especially considering that most children in the United States are covered by insurance, okay? Overwhelmingly. Yes, I'm going to get back to Medicaid in a second. Your families can submit those visits and get paid back, all right? So the direct primary care math, with the exception of vaccines for pediatricians, is insanely beneficial to the families and to you. Super insanely. But most of the DPC pediatricians are like, I want $5,000 a year, and I only want 100 kids. But just $5,000 a year, 100 kids is $500,000. And you don't need staff. You don't need anything, right? You make $400,000, all right? Of course, you just really want the good families, like the ones who aren't crazy, right? But, so in terms of viability in that regard, it is very much a thing. And I am not a fan of these companies. I don't want some people at this conference use them. I very much know people at this conference use them. I don't recommend this at all, but in the DPC space, there's some, I see it. Companies like, I won't name the other one because I think they aren't up to any good, but VaxCare, the people who they take your vaccine out of your practice, they own the vaccines. If you're using VaxCare or know someone who might, or you hear from them, hang up on them, and I'll explain why, but because they're the kind of the devil. But if you're DPC, why not? So I think it's viable. There are times that I have wished for the total implosion and demise of the health insurance industry across the board, because you could take cash from all of your families, all right, and including your Medicaid families, and still do well. I mean, look, in this room right now, you all average, on average, there's some of you do quite a bit more than this, okay, but it's all relative. You average between $150 and $175 a visit. You overhead 65%. I mean, let's put it another way. On average, even the owners, including the owners in this, you collect somewhere between 20 and 30% of your revenue. $150 a visit, a third of that is $50. You could literally walk out and skip all insurance and say, pay $50 a visit, and you would financially end up in a place that's essentially identical to where you are now, with none of the headache. And so if all of Blue Cross and United Healthcare and Cigna went away for your work, Not the work up at the hospital, the real indemnity stuff for your work, who cares? You could do it. So I like DPC for that purpose. I like the fact that DPC pushes the envelope and makes people wonder, and I am supportive of the community. That said, in order for it to work systemically, we would need to quadruple the number of pediatricians. There just aren't enough. So right now, what it becomes by a matter of supply and demand, it becomes a matter of now it becomes a matter of exclusivity, which is the thing that makes us all cringe. I'm obviously not going to solve the lack of pediatrician problem, but I do think, I'll say this is the last thing I'll say, and then I'll let everyone go for 2025. If you're in a group practice, because I haven't seen anyone do this, and I'm curious and I want to figure out why. If you're in a group practice, think about creating a DPC model inside the practice, all right? And I don't know why people don't do this, especially if it's competitive where you are. Because the things that a DPC model lacks, which is the infrastructure and all, like you can just say, here's our practice over here, and our VIP entrance with a different tax ID is over there. You know? And because I don't have a problem, I am enough of a capitalist that I don't have a problem if a family wants to spend money they have to get extra treatment. The problem I have personally is I don't want to leave these other kids behind. And if you can use that money from those families who want to pay you extra, and you can pull those kids along, well, that to me is the definition of like what we do. So I'm 100% for that. I just don't know anyone who's done it. Wow. Oh yeah, you cannot do it in the same tax ID. Those are two different businesses. And there's so many reasons why you can't do that, all right, with different tax IDs. Not even just the technical ones, they're legal ones, all right? So on that note,
Dr. Fody, I swear.
you cannot, if you have an insurance contract with Blue Cross Blue Shield, you can't hand choose some patients to treat differently. And whether that's how you collect your money, how you charge from it, or anything like that. You have to have your DPC practice over there and your normal practice or typical practice over here.
So have you seen successful hybrids?
No, that's what I'm saying. I want someone, I would love someone to carve it out and do it. Oh, you're doing it or you're going to do it?
We're gonna, because
Okay.
We're gonna lose, our Medicaid patients are gonna get booted, and so we're gonna have some way to keep them as patients, so we're coming up with one.
I'm hoping next year we have 2 people giving a hybrid concierge model lecture.
We literally, John Canning for years now has talked about PCC opening up its own practice just so we can try things out.
Right, exactly. Oh yeah, there's a reason why we haven't done it.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
All right, well.
All right.
Yeah.
I want to say thank you for everyone who lasted this long. We're good.
Thank you.
All right. We appreciate it, and I hope to see you all next year.